Robert Caldwell pressed his fingers against his temples as he stared at the letter on his desk. Another resignation. That made 18 nannies in 2 years. 18 highly qualified, experienced childcare professionals who had walked through his door with confidence and walked out 3 months later looking like they'd survived a war zone. The 51-year-old technology company owner had built his business from absolutely nothing. He'd started in a cramped studio apartment with just a laptop and an idea, working 20-hour days until his software company became one of the most successful in New York. He'd negotiated million-dollar deals, handled corporate takeovers, and managed teams of hundreds, but he couldn't keep one nanny for his 6-year-old twins longer than a season. His assistant knocked softly before entering. "Mr. Caldwell," the agency called. "They're sending someone for an interview tomorrow morning at 9. Robert nodded without looking up. What was the point? The pattern was always the same. The new nanny would arrive full of enthusiasm and modern parenting strategies. His twins, Lily and Noah, would be angels for exactly 3 days. Then the chaos would begin. Glue in the shampoo bottles. Alarm clocks hidden in air vents set to go off at 3 in the morning. Elaborate stories about severe allergies that would send the nanny rushing to the emergency room, only to discover it was completely fabricated. The twins weren't just mischievous. They were brilliant, calculated, and absolutely united in their mission. Every nanny who tried to create structure, implement boundaries, or heaven forbid, discipline them, was met with a level of creative destruction that would impress military strategists. Robert knew why they did it. He understood the psychology, but understanding didn't make him any better at fixing it. 2 years ago, his wife Catherine had died after a brutal 9-month battle with cancer. The twins had watched their vibrant, loving mother fade away in a hospital bed. They'd been only 4 years old when she was diagnosed, barely old enough to understand why Mommy was always tired, why her hair fell out, why she couldn't play with them anymore. Catherine had fought so hard to stay, squeezing every possible day out of her failing body because she couldn't bear to leave her babies. The night she died, Robert had held both twins in the hospital room as they said goodbye. Lily had been eerily quiet, her little face blank with shock. Noah had screamed and fought, trying to shake his mother awake. That night had shattered something in all 3 of them, and 2 years later they were all still living in the wreckage. Robert threw himself into work, because work made sense. Spreadsheets had logic, code had rules, business deals had clear outcomes. But grief? Grief was messy and unpredictable. Every time he looked at his children, he saw Catherine's eyes, Catherine's smile, Catherine's gestures. It hurt so much that he'd started avoiding them without even realizing it. He hired nannies to do what he couldn't manage himself, then felt crushing guilt every time another one quit. The twins, meanwhile, had figured out that if they drove away every caregiver, maybe, just maybe, their father would have no choice but to be present. But Robert always found another nanny. He always had another solution that didn't require him to face his own broken heart. The next morning, Robert prepared himself for another interview. He'd learned to spot the warning signs. The nannies who were too eager usually quit first because they underestimated the twins. The ones who were too strict created immediate warfare. The ones who tried to be friends got manipulated within hours. He honestly didn't know what he was looking for anymore. Maybe someone who was part bodyguard, part therapist, and part magician. At exactly 9 o'clock, his assistant showed in the new candidate. Robert looked up from his computer and paused. The woman standing in his office doorway was nothing like the previous 17 nannies. She was older, probably in her late 50s, with gray threads running through her dark hair that she'd pulled back into a simple bun. She wore a clean but clearly inexpensive dress and carried a handbag that had seen better years. Her hands showed decades of hard work, and there was a tiredness around her eyes that spoke of a life that hadn't been easy. "Mr. Caldwell, this is Dorothy Hayes," his assistant said before quietly leaving. Robert stood and shook her hand, noticing her firm grip and direct eye contact. "Please sit down. Can I get you some coffee or water?" "Water would be lovely, thank you." Her voice was warm and had a slight southern accent that she hadn't completely lost despite years in New York. As Robert poured water from the carafe on his desk, he glanced at the thin folder the agency had sent. Dorothy's resume was sparse compared to the others. No degree in child development, no certification in Montessori methods. She'd worked as a housekeeper, a cafeteria worker, and a home health aide. She'd raised 4 children of her own as a single mother, after her husband died in a construction accident 23 years ago. The agency note said she was looking for a live-in position now that her own children were grown, and she'd recently lost her apartment due to rising rent costs. Robert felt a familiar skepticism rising. This woman had no formal childcare training. She was clearly struggling financially. Was she just desperate for a well-paying job with housing included? Would she last any longer than the others? But he'd tried 17 credentialed professionals. Maybe desperation wasn't the worst quality in a candidate. "I'll be honest with you, Mrs. Hayes," Robert began, settling back in his leather chair. "This is not an easy position. My children are very intelligent, very creative, and very determined. They've driven away every nanny I've hired since their mother passed away 2 years ago." Dorothy nodded slowly, her expression thoughtful rather than worried. "Tell me about them. Not about the problems. Tell me who they are." The question caught Robert off guard. Most nannies wanted to know about schedules, dietary restrictions, and disciplinary boundaries. Who they are. Yes, what makes your daughter laugh? What does your son dream about? What did their mama love most about them? Robert felt his throat tighten unexpectedly. When was the last time someone had asked him about his children as people, rather than as problems to be managed? "Lily loves drawing," he said slowly. "She fills notebooks with pictures of fantastic creatures and magical places. Before Catherine got sick, they'd spend hours making up stories together about the characters Lily invented." "And your son?" "Noah loves building things. Legos, blocks, cardboard boxes, whatever he can get his hands on. He'll spend hours constructing elaborate structures. Catherine used to say he got that from me, that he had an engineer's mind." Robert's voice wavered slightly. He cleared his throat. "They're good kids. They're just hurting." Dorothy leaned forward slightly. "Of course they're hurting. They lost their mama. That kind of pain doesn't disappear just because adults want it to." The previous nannies tried various approaches. Behavioral therapy techniques, reward systems, strict schedules, flexible schedules. Nothing worked. "Maybe because they were trying to fix your children instead of just being with them," Dorothy said gently. "Grief can't be fixed, Mr. Caldwell. It can only be carried, and it's a lot lighter when someone helps you carry it." Robert studied this woman, this stranger who was speaking truths that his expensive therapist had taken months to articulate. "The agency mentioned you lost your husband many years ago. 23 years last April. He fell from scaffolding on a construction site. Left me with 4 babies under the age of 10 and no insurance." Dorothy's eyes grew distant with memory. "I thought I'd die from the pain of it. Some mornings I didn't want to wake up, but those 4 babies needed breakfast, needed clean clothes, needed someone to tell them everything would be okay even when I didn't believe it myself." "How did you manage?" "One day at a time. One meal at a time. One bedtime story at a time. I worked 3 jobs some years. Cleaned offices at night, worked the cafeteria at the elementary school during the day, took in ironing on weekends. We never had much, but we had each other. My kids are all grown now, doing well. That's worth more than any fancy house or expensive things we never had." Robert felt something shift in his chest. This woman knew real loss, real struggle. She wasn't going to be shocked by 2 grieving children acting out. "I should tell you what you're up against," he said. "The twins have gotten quite creative with their methods. They've put hair removal cream in shampoo bottles, convinced nannies they were deathly allergic to foods they ate regularly, staged fake injuries, and once even called the police to report their nanny for kidnapping." Dorothy's eyebrows rose. "That's quite an operation. They must spend a lot of time planning." "They do. They're extremely coordinated. If one starts crying, the other backs up the story. They've got signals worked out between them." "Sounds like they're protecting each other," Dorothy observed, "and testing every adult to see who's strong enough to stay. They've learned that people leave. First their mama, then every caregiver since. They're trying to control the leaving by making it happen on their terms." Robert stared at her. In 2 minutes, this woman with no psychology degree had articulated what his high-priced child therapist had taken weeks to explain. That's exactly what their therapist said. "Don't need a degree to understand pain, Mr. Caldwell. Just need to have lived through it." Dorothy met his eyes directly. "I won't lie to you. I'm taking this interview because I need the job. My landlord sold my building, and the new owners tripled the rent. At my age, finding affordable housing in this city isn't easy. But I also won't lie and say I'm qualified in all the fancy ways those other nannies probably were. What I can tell you is this. I won't quit because your children are grieving. I won't quit because they test me. I won't quit because they're angry or sad or scared. I've weathered worse storms than two heartbroken 6-year-olds can bring. Something in her words and her steady presence made Robert want to believe her. But he'd wanted to believe all the others too. When can you start? I can start today if you need me to. Everything I own fits in 2 suitcases. That statement hung in the air between them, a reminder of the vast difference in their circumstances. Robert lived in an $18 million penthouse. This woman's entire life fit in 2 suitcases. Let's start Monday. That gives you the weekend to settle in. My assistant will show you the room that would be yours. It has a private bathroom and plenty of space. Dorothy stood, smoothing her dress. I'd like to meet Lily and Noah before I officially accept, if that's all right. I want them to have a say in this. Another unexpected request. They're at school right now, but they'll be home at 4. Can you come back then? I'll be here. That afternoon, Robert left work early for the first time in months. He wanted to be present when Dorothy met the twins, wanted to see how they'd react to her. He'd learned that the first meeting could be deceiving. The twins were always on their best behavior initially. It was once they'd assessed the new nanny's weaknesses that the real trouble began. At 4:15, the twins burst through the penthouse door with their usual after-school energy, dropping backpacks in the entryway and racing toward the kitchen for snacks. They skidded to a stop when they saw their father standing in the living room with a stranger. Lily, Noah, come here, please, Robert said. The twins exchanged a glance. A whole conversation seemed to pass between them in that look. They walked over slowly, suspicious and united, already preparing their defenses. This is Mrs. Hayes. She might be coming to stay with us and help take care of you. We don't need a new nanny, Lily said flatly. The last one just left. Yeah, Noah added. We're fine by ourselves. Dorothy smiled but didn't move toward them. Nice to meet you both. Your daddy told me you're pretty good at making nannies quit. That must take a lot of work. The twins blinked, surprised by her directness. Adults usually pretended not to know about their schemes. I just wanted to meet you before I took the job, Dorothy continued. See if you seemed like the kind of kids I'd like being around. Your daddy says you like to draw and build things. That true? Lily crossed her arms. What if we don't want you here? That's fair, Dorothy nodded. You've had a lot of people come and go. Must be tiring getting used to someone new every few months just to have them leave again. Noah's tough expression wavered slightly. They always leave. Most people do leave when things get hard, Dorothy agreed. But not everybody. Some folks stick around even when it's difficult. I'm one of those people. I don't quit easy. That's what they all say, Lily muttered. You're right. Talk is cheap. I'll have to show you, won't I? Dorothy tilted her head. How about this? I'll take the job for 1 month. You two do your worst. Pull whatever tricks you've got planned. At the end of the month, if I'm still here, we talk about whether this arrangement works for all of us. Deal? The twins looked at each other again, having another one of their silent conversations. Finally, Noah shrugged. Okay, deal. As Dorothy left to collect her things, Robert watched his children retreat to their rooms. He couldn't shake the feeling that something significant had just happened, though he couldn't quite name what it was. Dorothy Hayes was either about to become nanny number 19 to quit in defeat, or something was about to change in the Caldwell household, only time would tell which one it would be. Dorothy moved into the Caldwell penthouse on a Sunday evening with her 2 suitcases and a cardboard box of personal items. The room Robert had prepared for her was bigger than the entire apartment she'd been living in for the past 5 years. It had a queen-sized bed with fresh linens, a private bathroom with heated floors, and a window overlooking Central Park. She sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment, overwhelmed by the softness of the mattress and the silence of the space. Through the walls, she could hear the twins in their rooms, the muffled sounds of their evening routines. Robert had already retreated to his home office, she'd noticed. He'd helped her carry her things up, made sure she had everything she needed, then disappeared behind his desk like a man escaping a crime scene. Dorothy recognized that behavior. She'd seen it in her own mirror after her husband died. Grief made cowards of the bravest people. Monday morning started early. Dorothy woke at 5:30 out of habit, decades of early shifts permanently wiring her internal clock. She made her way to the kitchen and stood there for a moment, overwhelmed by the gleaming appliances and granite countertops. The refrigerator was the size of a small car, and when she opened it, she found it packed with organic produce, expensive cheeses, and prepared meals in neat containers labeled with dates and nutritional information. She pulled out eggs, butter, and milk, then searched the cabinets until she found flour, sugar, and baking powder. If she was going to do this job, she was going to do it her way. By 6:30, the kitchen smelled like fresh biscuits, scrambled eggs, and bacon. Real bacon, not the turkey substitute she'd found in the refrigerator. Robert appeared first, drawn by the unfamiliar smell. He stood in the kitchen doorway looking confused, still in his pajamas and robe. "What's all this?" "Breakfast," Dorothy said simply, flipping bacon in the cast-iron skillet she'd found buried in a cabinet. "Hope you don't mind. I saw all those containers in the fridge, but I figured a hot breakfast might be nice for the first day. The meal service delivers everything pre-portioned, based on the children's nutritional needs," Robert said, though he was eyeing the biscuits with obvious interest. "I'm sure it's very scientific," Dorothy agreed, "but there's no science that beats a grandmother's biscuit recipe. Trust me on that." The twins emerged next, following their noses. They stopped short when they saw the spread on the kitchen table. Lily looked suspicious. Noah looked hungry. "What's the catch?" Lily asked. "No catch. Just breakfast. Sit down if you want some or don't. Your choice." The twins exchanged their signature look before slowly sitting at the table. Dorothy placed plates in front of them, then Robert. For a moment, everyone just stared at their food like it might explode. "It's not poisoned," Dorothy said mildly, taking a bite of her own biscuit, "though I suppose after 18 nannies you've got good reason to be suspicious of everything." Noah picked up his fork and took a tiny bite of eggs. His eyes widened. He took a bigger bite. Within minutes, both twins were eating like they'd been starved, the carefully portioned meal service completely forgotten. Robert ate more slowly, but Dorothy noticed he finished everything on his plate. "This is really good," he admitted. "My grandmother taught me. Said there's no problem so big it can't be helped a little by good food and company." Dorothy started clearing plates. "Now you two have school. Let's get moving." The ride to school was quiet, the twins whispering to each other in the back seat while Dorothy navigated Robert's town car through morning traffic. She'd driven plenty of vehicles in her life, but never one that cost more than a house. When they pulled up to the private school with its iron gates and manicured lawns, Dorothy saw other nannies and parents dropping off children. Several of them stared at her, and she recognized the look. She'd been getting versions of it her whole life. "Pick you up at 3, she told the twins. "Try to learn something." "We're going to make you quit," Lily said matter-of-factly as she got out of the car. "I know," Dorothy replied. "Good luck with that." She spent the day exploring the penthouse, getting familiar with where everything was kept. She also spent time in the twins' rooms while they were gone, not snooping but observing. Lily's room was filled with drawings, some pinned to walls, others stuffed in drawers. Dorothy looked at them carefully. Most were beautiful, imaginative scenes of castles and dragons and magical forests, but some, hidden in the back of drawers, were darker. Pictures of a woman in a hospital bed. Pictures of 2 small figures standing alone. Pictures of tears. Noah's room was organized chaos with building projects in various states of completion covering every surface. But on his nightstand, Dorothy found a photograph in a silver frame. A beautiful woman with kind eyes holding 2 babies. The glass was smudged with fingerprints like someone touched it often. Next to it was a small toy car worn from handling. Dorothy understood. These children weren't just grieving. They were stuck in their grief, trapped in it, with no one to show them the way through. That afternoon, she picked them up from school right on time. The twins got in the car silently, clearly discussing something through their looks and small gestures. "How was school?" Dorothy asked. "Fine," they said in unison. When they got home, Dorothy had snacks ready. Real cookies that she'd baked that afternoon, not the organic, sugar-free alternatives in the pantry. The twins ate them suspiciously, waiting for something bad to happen. "I need to go to the bathroom," Lily announced suddenly. "Okay," Dorothy said. Lily left. 5 minutes later, she came back looking disappointed. "The toilet's broken, is it?" Dorothy got up and went to check. The toilet worked perfectly fine. She came back to the kitchen. "Seems fine to me." Lily's face flushed. She'd glued the seat down on the hall bathroom, Dorothy realized. But Dorothy had used the bathroom in her own suite. "Must have been a temporary thing," Dorothy said pleasantly. "Happens sometimes." Strike one for the twins. Over dinner that night, which Dorothy made from scratch despite Robert's protests about the meal service, Noah suddenly clutched his throat. I can't breathe. I'm allergic to tomatoes. Dorothy looked at him calmly. Are you now? That's strange because your dad told me you ate spaghetti with the last nanny just fine. Also, there aren't any tomatoes in this chicken and rice. Noah deflated slightly. Maybe it's the chicken. I might be allergic to chicken. Maybe, Dorothy agreed. Or maybe you're testing me to see if I'll panic. I've raised 4 children, sweetheart. I've seen every trick in the book and a few that aren't. Eat your dinner or don't. But I'm not calling an ambulance for fake allergies. Strike 2. By the end of the first week, the twins had tried everything they could think of. They hid Dorothy's shoes, but she simply wore her old ones and didn't complain. They unplugged her phone charger every night, but she didn't mention it. They told her the elevator was broken, making her climb 18 flights of stairs. But she just climbed them without a word, and was waiting in the kitchen with lunch when they got home from school. On Friday afternoon, Lily tried a different approach. Our mom used to let us have ice cream before dinner. Dorothy looked at her steadily. Did she? Yeah, every day. I don't believe you, Dorothy said gently. I think your mom probably let you have ice cream sometimes as a treat, but not every day before dinner. And I think you know that lying about what she did isn't the same as remembering her. Lily's face crumpled. For a moment she looked like she might cry, but she caught herself and ran to her room. Dorothy gave her 20 minutes, then knocked softly on the door. Can I come in? Go away. I'm coming in anyway. Dorothy opened the door. Lily was face down on her bed, not crying but rigid with held-back emotion. Dorothy sat on the edge of the bed. You miss her so much it feels like you can't breathe sometimes, doesn't it? Lily didn't answer, but her shoulders tensed. I know what that feels like, Dorothy continued. When my husband died, I'd wake up every morning and forget for just a second. Then I'd remember, and it felt like falling off a cliff, over and over again, every single morning. Does it stop? Lily's voice was muffled by her pillow. The falling feeling? Eventually. The missing? No, that never completely stops. But it changes. It gets softer around the edges, less like a knife and more like an ache. Lily finally turned her head to look at Dorothy. Her eyes were dry but red-rimmed. All the other nannies said we needed to move on, that Mom would want us to be happy. Moving on is a terrible thing to say to a child who lost their mother, Dorothy said firmly. You don't move on from people you love. You move forward with them in your heart. There's a big difference. What's the difference? Moving on means leaving them behind. Moving forward means taking them with you. Every time you draw a picture, you can remember how your mom loved your art. Every time you smile, you can know she'd be happy to see it. She's not gone from your life. She's just in a different part of it now. Lily was quiet for a long moment. The other nannies never wanted to talk about her. They changed the subject every time we mentioned her. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Lots of people don't know how to talk about death. Makes them uncomfortable. But I'm not uncomfortable with it. You want to talk about your mom, we'll talk about her. You want to cry about missing her, you cry. You want to be angry that she's gone, you be angry. All of that is okay. Really? Really. That night, for the first time since Dorothy arrived, Lily didn't try to sabotage anything. At dinner, she even voluntarily told a story about something funny her mom used to do. Noah listened carefully, then added his own memory. Robert looked up from his plate, surprised, and for just a moment, his careful mask slipped and Dorothy saw the raw grief underneath. The weekend was a turning point. On Saturday morning, Dorothy made her grandmother's pancakes and the twins actually helped, measuring ingredients and stirring batter. When Lily accidentally spilled flour all over the counter, Dorothy just laughed and showed her how to clean it up. No anger? No lectures about being careful, just easy problem solving. The last nanny would have been so mad, Noah observed. I'm not the last nanny, Dorothy replied. And a little spilled flour never hurt anyone. My kitchen back home was always covered in something. That's how you know people are actually cooking. Later that morning, Dorothy suggested they do something special. What did you and your mom like to do on Saturdays? The twins looked at each other uncertainly. We went to the park a lot, Noah said finally. Mom liked to feed the ducks. Then let's go feed the ducks. They spent 2 hours at Central Park tossing bread to ducks and geese. Dorothy didn't rush them or check her phone or seem impatient. She just was present, sitting on the bench between them, letting them direct the activity. On the way home, Lily slipped her hand into Dorothy's without seeming to realize she'd done it. That evening, Robert came home from his Saturday office hours to find all three of them building a blanket fort in the living room. His expensive furniture had been rearranged, couch cushions were on the floor, and blankets were draped over chairs to create a maze of tunnels and rooms. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice carrying a mix of surprise and uncertainty. "We're making a fort," Noah said, as if this should be obvious. "Mom used to make these with us." Robert's face did something complicated. "She did? You could help," Lily offered tentatively. "If you want." Dorothy watched Robert carefully. She could see him wanting to retreat to his office to escape this moment that was too raw, too real, but she caught his eye and gave him a small nod. "Try, just try." Robert put down his briefcase. "Okay, where do you need me?" For the next hour, the four of them worked on the fort together. Robert was awkward at first, unsure how to play, but the twins guided him patiently. They showed him how their mother used to secure the blankets, where the secret entrance was supposed to be, how to make the ceiling high enough to sit up inside. When it was finished, they all crawled inside and sat in the dim, blanket-filtered light. Lily pulled out a flashlight and held it under her chin like she was about to tell a ghost story. "Mom used to tell us about the Blanket Fort Kingdom," she said softly, "a place where kids could be safe and have adventures." "I remember," Robert said, his voice rough. "She made up elaborate stories. There was a dragon named Frederick who was afraid of mice, and a princess who was also a scientist," Noah added excitedly. "She invented flying machines." "Your mother always said girls could be anything they wanted," Robert said. "She would have loved to see what you're becoming, both of you." They sat there in the fort, trading memories of Catherine, and for the first time since she died, it didn't feel like opening a wound. It felt like honoring something precious. Dorothy stayed quiet, letting them have this moment, but her presence somehow made it safe enough to happen. Later, after the twins were in bed, Robert found Dorothy in the kitchen cleaning up. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" "For today. For the fort. For getting them to talk about Catherine. The therapist has been trying to get them to open up for months. They're not broken things that need fixing, Mr. Caldwell. They're children who need permission to feel what they're feeling. Big difference." Robert leaned against the counter. "I don't know how to do what you did today. I don't know how to talk about her without falling apart." "Maybe that's okay too," Dorothy said gently. "Maybe they need to see that you're sad too. That you miss her too. Right now they think they're alone in their grief. They think they have to be strong for you while you think you have to be strong for them. Everybody's pretending and nobody's healing. I'm their father. I'm supposed to have answers. No parent has all the answers, Mr. Caldwell, but you've got love. That's enough if you let yourself show it." Robert was quiet for a long moment. "The board meeting I went to today? I didn't need to be there. I could have stayed home. It's easier at the office. I know what I'm doing there." "I know," Dorothy said. "But those babies upstairs need you more than any board meeting does. They need their daddy, not your money or your success. Just you. What if I can't give them what they need? You won't know until you try. And I'll tell you something else. They're testing you just as much as they tested me this week. Every time you choose work over them, they learn that they're not worth staying for. Just like all those nannies who left." The words hit Robert like a physical blow. "I never thought about it that way." "Most people don't, but children see everything, even the things we think we're hiding." Dorothy dried her hands on a towel. "I'll make you a deal. I won't quit on your kids if you won't quit on them either. But you've got to actually be here. Not just physically in the building, but present." "Can you do that?" Robert looked toward the hallway where his children slept. "I can try. That's all any of us can do," Dorothy said. "Now go get some rest. Tomorrow's Sunday. Maybe we could all do something together. As a family." The word hung in the air. Family. It had been just a word for so long, hollow and painful. But maybe, just maybe, it could start to mean something again. 3 weeks had passed since Dorothy moved into the Caldwell penthouse, and the changes were subtle but undeniable. The twins still had their difficult moments, still tested boundaries, still woke up some mornings angry at the world. But something fundamental had shifted. They'd stopped trying to make Dorothy quit and started cautiously to let her in. Dorothy noticed things the other nannies had missed because they'd been too busy implementing strategies and maintaining schedules. She noticed that every Thursday, Noah became withdrawn and irritable, picking fights with his sister and refusing to eat lunch. She noticed that Lily kept a nightlight on even though she insisted she wasn't afraid of the dark, and that she'd get up multiple times during the night to check that Noah was still in his room. One Thursday morning, Dorothy decided to test her theory. "Noah, how about we skip your piano lesson today and go to the park instead?" Noah looked up from his cereal, suspicious. "Why?" "Because I think you need it," Dorothy said simply. "Sometimes a person just needs to be outside, you know?" The park was nearly empty on a weekday afternoon. Dorothy and Noah walked along the paths, not talking, just being together. Finally, Noah stopped at a bench near the playground. "Mom used to bring us here every Thursday," he said quietly. "It was our special day. Dad worked late on Thursdays, so it was just us three." Dorothy sat beside him. "And now Thursdays feel wrong because she's not here." Noah nodded, his jaw tight. "Lily doesn't remember as good as me. She was littler. But I remember everything. Mom would push us on the swings until we screamed for her to stop. Then we'd get ice cream from the truck. Even though we weren't supposed to have sugar before dinner, she'd say it was our secret. Sounds like your mom knew that sometimes rules need to be broken for the right reasons." "I miss her so much," Noah whispered. "Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like, and that scares me." Dorothy reached over and took his small hand in hers. "That's one of the hardest parts. The way memories fade even when we don't want them to. But I'll tell you what my mama told me when my husband died. She said the people we love don't just live in our memories. They live in the things they taught us, the ways they changed us. Every time you're kind to your sister, that's your mom living in you. Every time you build something creative, that's her too. But I want to hear her voice. I want her to see the stuff I build." "I know, baby. I know." Dorothy sat with him while he cried, not trying to fix it or rush him through it, just bearing witness to his pain. When the tears finally stopped, she said, "How about we make Thursday our special day? Not to replace what you had with your mom, but to honor it. We'll come to this park every Thursday, just you and me. And if you want to talk about her, we will. If you don't want to talk at all, that's fine too." Noah looked at her with red-rimmed eyes. "Every Thursday? Every single one? Rain or shine? Can we get ice cream from the truck?" Dorothy smiled. "Your mom had the right idea about that. Absolutely we can." That night at dinner, Noah was different. Lighter somehow. He told his father about the park, about the ice cream, about the deal he and Dorothy had made. Robert listened carefully, and Dorothy saw something dawn on his face. Understanding. Maybe even guilt that he hadn't noticed his son's Thursday struggles. Lily's nighttime fears took longer to understand. Dorothy would hear her padding down the hallway at night, checking on Noah, then going back to her room. One night, Dorothy got up and found Lily standing in the doorway of her brother's room, just watching him sleep. "Can't sleep?" Dorothy asked softly. Lily jumped, startled. "I needed to make sure he was still there," Dorothy finished. "You do this every night, don't you?" Lily's chin trembled. "What if something happens to him? What if he gets sick like Mom did? She was fine, and then she wasn't, and then she was gone. What if Noah— Come here, sweetheart." Dorothy guided Lily to the living room and sat with her on the couch. "When your mom got sick, it happened fast, didn't it? One day she was normal mom, and then suddenly everything changed. She told us she just had a bad cold. Then she was in the hospital. Then she didn't come home." Lily's voice was small. "Nobody told us the truth until it was too late. They kept saying she'd get better." Dorothy's heart ached. Adults do that sometimes. They think they're protecting kids by not telling them scary things. But it just makes the scary things scarier because you don't understand what's happening. "I'm scared all the time now," Lily admitted. "What if Dad gets sick? What if Noah gets sick? What if you—" She stopped herself. "What if I leave like everyone else?" Lily nodded miserably. "Lily, look at me." Dorothy waited until the little girl met her eyes. "I can't promise that nothing bad will ever happen. Life is unpredictable, and sometimes terrible things happen to people we love. But I can promise you this. I'm not going anywhere by choice. I'm not leaving because the job is hard or because you have bad days. I'm here because I want to be here because you and your brother matter to me. But what if you get sick? Then we'll deal with it together. But honey, I'm healthy. I'm strong. And I'm planning on being around for a good long while." Dorothy pulled Lily close. "How about this? What if we put a baby monitor in Noah's room? Then you can hear him breathing from your room. You won't have to get up to check on him. But I'm too old for baby monitors. Who says? It's not about being a baby. It's about having a tool that helps you feel safe. Lots of people use sound machines or night lights or special blankets to feel secure at night. This is just your thing. Nothing wrong with that. They set up the monitor that night. For the first time in 2 years, Lily slept through until morning. The changes in the twins hadn't gone unnoticed at their school. Their teachers mentioned to Robert that both children seemed happier, more engaged. Lily had even volunteered to help a new student who was struggling with reading. Noah had joined a robotics club, something he'd refused to do the previous year. But not everyone was pleased with the changes. One afternoon, Dorothy was waiting in the pickup line at school when another woman approached her car. The woman was perfectly put together in expensive workout clothes and designer sunglasses, her blonde hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. "Excuse me," the woman said through Dorothy's open window. "You're the Caldwell children's nanny, aren't you?" "I am," Dorothy replied pleasantly. "I'm Christine Porter. My daughter's in Lily's class." The woman's smile was tight. "I've been meaning to talk to Robert about something, but since you're here, well, I'll just be direct. Some of us have noticed that Lily has been talking quite a bit about you at school, about your cooking, your stories, your background." Dorothy waited, sensing where this was going. "The thing is," Christine continued, her voice dripping with false concern, "we've worked very hard to build a certain culture at this school. These children come from prominent families. They need guidance from people who understand their world, who can prepare them for their social responsibilities. I'm sure you're very nice, but don't you think the Caldwell children would benefit from someone with more appropriate credentials? Someone from a similar background?" Dorothy looked at this woman with her expensive clothes and her barely concealed disdain. She'd encountered people like Christine her entire life. People who thought her skin color and her economic status made her less than. People who smiled while they insulted her. "I appreciate your concern," Dorothy said evenly, "but I think the children are doing just fine." "Are they, though?" Christine's voice sharpened. "I heard Noah had a complete meltdown in class last week. Is that the kind of behavior we want to encourage? And Lily draws these disturbing pictures of hospitals and death. That doesn't seem healthy to me. With all due respect, Mrs. Porter, those children lost their mother. They're grieving. That's not disturbing. That's normal. Maybe if more people let them express their feelings instead of expecting them to act like everything is fine, they'd heal faster." Christine's face flushed. "I was simply trying to help. Robert is a respected member of our community. People are talking. Let them talk," Dorothy said calmly. "Those children don't need people who care about appearances. They need people who care about them. Now, if you'll excuse me, school's letting out." That evening, Dorothy debated whether to tell Robert about the encounter. She decided honesty was important even when the truth was uncomfortable. After the twins went to bed, she found him in his office and recounted the conversation. Robert's face darkened as she spoke. "She said that to you? That you weren't appropriate?" "She did, and she won't be the last. People like her, they see someone like me in a place like this and they make assumptions." Dorothy sat across from him. "I need to know if that's going to be a problem for you. If my being here is going to cause trouble for your business or your reputation, we should address that now." "A problem for me?" Robert stood up, angry in a way Dorothy hadn't seen before. "Dorothy, in 3 weeks you've done what 18 other nannies couldn't do. My children are laughing again. They're sleeping. They're talking about their mother without breaking down. Do you think I care what Christine Porter thinks? Sometimes reputation matters in your world. Then maybe I've been spending time in the wrong world." Robert ran his hand through his hair. "When Catherine died, all these people showed up with casseroles and condolences. They said the right things, sent expensive flower arrangements, made generous donations in her name. But not one of them, not a single person asked my children how they were really doing. They were uncomfortable around grief, so they avoided us. Called less. Stopped inviting us to things." He looked at Dorothy directly. "You know what you did your first day here? You asked me what makes my children laugh. You wanted to know who they are, not what they look like on paper. That's worth more than all the credentials and appropriate backgrounds in the world." Dorothy felt something warm in her chest. Validation, respect, things she'd worked her whole life for and received so rarely. "Thank you for saying that. I should have said it sooner." Robert sat back down. And I should tell you something else. You were right about me hiding in my office. I've been avoiding my own children because being around them hurts. Every time I look at them, I see Catherine. Every smile, every gesture, it's like losing her all over again. That doesn't go away, Dorothy said gently. But it does get easier to bear. How long did it take you? After your husband died? Dorothy thought about it. About 2 years before I could think about him without wanting to cry. 5 years before I could feel joy without feeling guilty about it. 10 years before I realized I'd built a whole new life and he'd want me to be proud of that instead of sad. It's been 2 years for me, and I feel like I'm still at day 1. That's because you haven't let yourself grieve. You've been running from it, staying busy, keeping moving so it can't catch you. But grief always catches up eventually. Dorothy leaned forward. Those children need to see you grieve. They need to know it's okay to be sad, to miss her, to struggle. Right now, they think they have to be strong for you. That's too much weight for 6-year-olds to carry. Robert's eyes filled with tears. What if I fall apart and can't put myself back together? Then we'll help you. That's what family does. The word hung between them again. Family. It kept appearing in their conversations. This idea that was bigger than employer and employee, bigger than nanny and charges. Something was forming in the Caldwell household. Something that didn't have a clear label but felt more real than any contract. That weekend, Robert did something he hadn't done since Catherine died. He canceled his Saturday meetings. All of them. When Dorothy asked what he wanted to do, he looked nervous. I was thinking maybe we could all go somewhere together. As a family. The twins were shocked when he announced it at breakfast. You're staying home? Noah asked, suspicious. All day? All day. I thought maybe we could go to the aquarium. Your mom loved that place. Lily and Noah exchanged a look, but this time it wasn't their secret communication. It was hope, tentative and fragile. Okay, Lily said carefully. That sounds good. The aquarium was crowded with weekend visitors, but they didn't mind. They walked through the dim halls with blue light filtering through massive tanks, watching sharks and rays and schools of colorful fish. Robert told stories about coming here with Catherine when they were dating, before the twins were born. Dorothy walked a few steps behind, giving them space but staying close enough to be included. At the jellyfish exhibit, Lily pressed her face to the glass. Mom said jellyfish were like underwater ghosts, beautiful but untouchable. She was right, Robert said, his voice thick. She had a way of seeing poetry in everything. I wish I was more like her, Lily said quietly. Robert knelt down beside his daughter. You are like her. You have her creativity, her kindness, her strength. And you're also yourself, which is exactly who you're supposed to be. Noah tugged on Robert's sleeve. Dad, can we get Mom's favorite animal at the gift shop? To remember today? What was her favorite? Sea turtles. She said they were ancient and wise and carried their homes on their backs. They bought a small sea turtle figurine, and Noah held it carefully all the way home. That night he placed it on the mantel in the living room where everyone could see it. A small memorial, a way of bringing Catherine into their healing instead of locking her away in the past. After the twins were asleep, Robert found Dorothy in the kitchen. Thank you for today, for suggesting I stay home, for being there. You showed up, Dorothy said. That's what mattered. Those kids have been waiting for you to show up for 2 years. I don't know how to do this, how to be present and work and keep everything together. You don't have to keep everything together. That's the secret nobody tells you. It's okay to fall apart sometimes. It's okay to need help. That's not weakness. That's being human. Robert looked at this woman who'd come into his life with 2 suitcases and changed everything. I'm glad you're here, Dorothy. I don't think I've actually said that yet. I'm glad I'm here too, she replied. These kids, this family, you're all worth staying for. And in that moment, in that expensive penthouse with its perfect view and its broken heart slowly mending, something like hope began to grow. The whispers started small the way these things always do. A comment here, a raised eyebrow there. Dorothy noticed the other nannies at school pickup looking at her differently, their conversations stopping when she approached. She'd lived enough years to recognize the signs. People were talking. It came to a head on a Tuesday afternoon at the school's parent association meeting. Robert had asked Dorothy to attend in his place since he had an unavoidable board meeting. She'd been hesitant, knowing she'd be the only person of color in a room full of wealthy parents discussing fundraisers and curriculum changes. But Robert had insisted, saying she was part of the family and had every right to be there. Dorothy sat in the back of the school's pristine conference room, trying to be invisible. The meeting droned on about the spring gala, the new computer lab, the organic lunch program. Then Christine Porter stood up, her voice carrying that particular tone of false sweetness that always preceded something ugly. "I'd like to raise a concern about child care standards," Christine began. "We all entrust our children to caregivers, and I think it's important that we ensure these individuals reflect the values and culture we're trying to instill. After all, our children are impressionable, and they spend significant time with these employees." Dorothy's stomach tightened. She knew exactly where this was going. Another parent, a man in an expensive suit, nodded. "I think Christine raises a valid point. These children will inherit positions of influence. Their education, both formal and informal, shapes who they become." "Exactly," Christine continued, "which is why I was surprised to learn that the Caldwell children's current caregiver has no formal education in child development, no credentials from recognized institutions, and frankly, comes from a very different background than the one these children are being prepared to enter." The principal, Mrs. Anderson, shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Porter, I'm not sure this is the appropriate forum. I disagree. If one of our prominent families is making choices that affect the school community, we have a right to discuss it. The Caldwell children have been disruptive lately. Lily talks constantly about topics that are frankly inappropriate for the classroom. Death, grief, poverty. These aren't subjects that make other children comfortable." Dorothy felt heat rising in her chest, but she stayed quiet, years of experience teaching her when to speak and when to listen. "And last week," another mother chimed in, "my son came home asking why we don't make real food like Noah's nanny does. He wanted to know why we have a meal service instead of cooking. I don't appreciate my parenting choices being questioned because of some woman who what?" Dorothy stood up, her voice calm but carrying steel underneath. "Please finish that sentence. Some woman who what exactly?" The room went silent. Christine's face flushed. "I didn't mean anything offensive. I simply meant someone without proper qualifications." "No, you meant someone who looks like me, someone who wasn't born into money, someone who doesn't fit your idea of what belongs in your world." Dorothy walked to the front of the room, decades of dignity in every step. "Let me tell you about my qualifications. I raised 4 children on my own after my husband died. 4 college graduates who are good, kind people contributing to their communities. I did that while working 3 jobs, making sure they had food and clothes and love even when we had nothing else." She looked around the room, meeting eyes that couldn't quite meet hers. "I don't have a degree in child psychology, that's true. But I know what it means to grieve. I know how to sit with pain instead of running from it.